Today, we're diving deep into the past, but we're not just looking at a civilization lost to sand and time. We're actually looking at the blueprint for our world. We're going to uncover how ancient Egypt's genius is still all around us, from the calendar on your wall to the very letters on this screen.
So that's the big question, right? How did a society that thrived for 3,000 years, that's an incredible stretch of time, end up creating the groundwork for so many things we just take for granted? Well, let's peel back the layers and explore the incredible intellectual and cultural blueprint they left for us all.
So the first part of this blueprint was all about creating order out of chaos, and they had two main tools to do it: math and astronomy. See, they needed a way to understand their world, to predict its rhythms, and to build a stable society that could actually last. Okay, let's just start with something that is truly mind-bending. I want you to imagine trying to run a massive empire, building pyramids, collecting taxes, managing an economy, all without the number zero. It sounds completely impossible, right? But that is exactly what the Egyptians did.
And this really shows you their genius. Their number system, as simple as it seems to us, was perfect for what they needed. With it, they could predict the single most important event of their year, the annual flooding of the Nile. That flood was literally their lifeblood. They could figure out harvest sizes, divide up farmland, run a whole tax system, and, oh yeah, they engineered some of the most famous structures in all of human history, all without a zero. Incredible.
So, what about this number? 365. This is, you could argue, one of their greatest gifts to all of us. Just by watching the stars, the Egyptians were the very first civilization to figure out that a year was 365 days long. They created a calendar with 12 months of 30 days each, plus 5 extra days for festivals at the end. Sound familiar? It absolutely should. But they didn't stop there. To tell time at night, they mapped the sky into 36 groups of stars called decans. Every time a new decan group rose above the horizon, it marked a new hour. It was literally a clock in the stars. And this connection between the heavens and the earth was so important to them that they built their temples and even the Great Pyramids themselves to align with the stars. You know, like how the 3 pyramids at Giza perfectly mirror the stars in Orion's belt? Now for the next piece of their blueprint. You know, their curiosity wasn't just pointed up at the stars, they also turned it inward, to the human body. And they developed a medical understanding that was just shockingly sophisticated. And here's what's so fascinating. Their religious beliefs actually gave them a huge scientific advantage. The whole process of mummification, preparing a body for the afterlife, meant that Egyptian doctors got a hands-on, up-close look at human anatomy that was centuries ahead of anyone else. They knew what was inside the body because they'd actually seen it. This led to this really interesting double-sided approach to medicine. On the one hand, if they couldn't see what was wrong, they figured it must be evil spirits or angry gods, so they used magic spells and protective amulets. But on the other hand, they practiced real, evidence-based medicine. They examined their patients, they diagnosed diseases, they performed complex surgeries, and they even kept detailed medical records on papyrus, writing down what worked and what didn't. And surgery was a serious, structured process for them. They could diagnose illnesses we still recognize, like tuberculosis and polio. They had forms of anesthesia to numb patients during operations. Their toolkits had saws, forceps, and needles for amputations, removing tumors, and setting broken bones. And after the procedure, they used natural antiseptics, like honey, to keep wounds from getting infected. I mean, this was an incredibly advanced system. So, all this amazing knowledge was built on a foundation of incredible wealth and a really rich culture. And there's no better way to see that in action than by looking at the famous boy king Tutankhamun and the story of his tomb. Now, the thing about Tutankhamun is that he wasn't a particularly important pharaoh. He became king when he was just a kid and died before he was even 20. But his name became one of the most famous in history in 1922 when an archaeologist named Howard Carter, after years and years of searching, finally found the entrance to his sealed, completely untouched tomb. And what he found inside was, well, it was just staggering. Over 3,500 different artifacts, all crammed into a pretty small tomb. Just that number alone gives you a sense of the unbelievable wealth of the civilization. So let's take a quick look inside. Imagine stepping past these life-size statues of the king, standing guard. You'd see beds covered in gold, a solid gold throne, weapons, and even an entire chariot, all packed in there for his use in the afterlife. There were board games, beautiful jewelry, and then the mummy itself. inside 3 coffins nested one inside the other. The very last one was made of solid gold, with his face covered by that absolutely iconic death mask. In the end, King Tut's tomb is so much more than just a pile of treasure. This quote really says it best. It's a perfect little time capsule. It shows us everything about their beliefs, their daily lives, and their ideas about death, and it's proof that they were an incredibly rich society, filled with unbelievably skilled artists and craftspeople. But here's the thing. All this knowledge and culture didn't just get sealed away in tombs forever. In this last section, we're going to see how the Egyptian blueprint was shared, copied, and passed down through the centuries, becoming a gift to the entire world. So, how did their blueprint get out? Well, the main engines were trade and conflict. Egypt was a massive hub for commerce. They were exporting things like gold and wheat and importing things like silver and iron. But every single trade caravan, every ship that left their ports, carried more than just goods. It carried ideas, technology, and culture all across the ancient world. And this might be the most direct connection we have. This is basically the birth of our alphabet. See, Egyptian hieroglyphs were beautiful but super complex. Traders needed a faster, easier way to keep records, so they simplified the pictures into 22 symbols that stood for sounds. Later on, the Greeks picked up the system and made one key improvement. They added vowels. And that became the foundation for the Roman alphabet, and eventually for the very letters we're all using right now. So when you put all the pieces together, the legacy is just undeniable. The 365-day calendar we use, our foundational ideas about math and astronomy, the very beginnings of scientific medicine, and even the alphabet itself. All of these threads lead right back to that incredible blueprint created in ancient Egypt thousands of years ago. And that kind of leaves us with one final thought. The story of Egypt shows how much knowledge can survive through the ages, but it also shows us how much can be lost and then found again. It really makes you wonder, if this much has survived for us to find, what other secrets, what other blueprints from our ancient past are still buried out there, just waiting for their moment to be rediscovered?